Max, how's it going?
It's going great. Living the dream.
We're in the Bay Area. It could be any different. What was like the last text you've sent before we started shooting? Because I was like setting up all the equipment. It took a lot of time for me, and I saw you going through some stuff. So I'm wondering.
It's a good question. Well, I sent a couple of texts to my friends that I'm planning to pick up because we're going together to a birthday party in Sausalito, which is one of the coolest places in the Bay Area. If you've never been to Sausalito, definitely check it out.
Today's Saturday. I don't know what we're doing. It's like still part of work, or we just like hanging out. For me, it's both. But
yeah, for me as well. I think for a founder, like there is no personal or professional life. Like it's all mixed all together. Even though sometimes it's helpful to set boundaries, but the reality is like you just work 24/7. If you don't work, you're thinking about work, right? So.
And actually, when you're relaxing, it's kind of part of work, because when you're like more relaxed, you have like more energy to work later on.
Exactly.
But obviously, like one of the reasons why we're here, because I think that you're a person with such an impressive history of like different work projects. You're doing like amazing startup right now. So for people who's gonna watch it for the first time, or maybe for people who met you already but they don't know like all your story, can you like briefly share about how you got here?
Wow, what a fantastic question. Well, I moved to the Bay Area 8 years ago to pursue my grad school at Stanford. I did MBA and Master of Science in Sustainability, and then after graduation I decided to stay. So I worked at Google for a few years. I was a product manager responsible for ML infrastructure. And back then, in like 2019, 2020, it wasn't obvious at all that we needed to build all this compute, like massive data centers, hundreds of billions of dollars of investments. So I was part of a small team that was trying to figure out like if it makes sense, if there are enough signals that it's going to be useful. And then after working for a few years at Google, I decided to go into this wild startup world. I felt quite a bit of pressure from my peers at Stanford to build something on my own, because many of my classmates started their own companies. When I was at grad school, I didn't have any bright ideas, and I felt like, okay, I need to settle, I need to get my green card, I need to build my network, and then at some point, maybe I'll go and try something. And this moment sort of arrived in 2024. Before starting my startup, I also worked at another startup, because I got an advice from some of my mentors that before going all in on your own idea, you should kind of try to work at a startup, get a feel what it's like, because I had never worked in startups before. Like prior to coming to the US, I was in finance, I was doing investment banking and private equity, it felt weird initially, and it definitely felt different. But after a few months of working at a startup, I decided to create my own company, and for the last year or so, I've been building Happyverse. So that's the story. I'm very excited to be here. And
that's kind of interesting thing that you mentioned, because I think when it comes to a lot of parts of the world, you have like this cliche of a founder doing something, going against the flow, everybody telling them like, hey, be like in the safe corporate world. But from you and Stanford, it sounds like if you're staying in successful, great, career path of being in corporate world, it's you like already going against the flow, because everybody go to found something.
Yeah. I mean, like when I was recruiting to get a summer internship, I struggled quite a bit because my background wasn't particularly interesting to local employers. Like I worked in mostly Russian companies. I was based in Moscow, and I did well in my private equity job, but my skill set or my network wasn't really relevant for the local market. And when I got an offer from Google, I was very, very happy and I accepted it. But some of my peers, they were like, oh, you're going to Google? This is kind of like mean or whatever. Like, why are you going to Google? You should go to Series B startup. That was like a sweet spot for most of my classmates. Like, go to a startup which is not too early, but also not too late, so you can get like meaningful, I don't know, equity or exposure to the leadership, etc. And in the hindsight, I'm glad that I got to Google. It's an amazing company. I learned a ton. I met some incredible people. Some of them became my angel investors at Happyverse or my business partners. And yeah, just, people are saying something all the time. At the end of the day, you should listen, but you have to trust your instincts more than anything else.
Since you like one of people who got through pretty extensive education track, then you've been like in corporate world, right now you're building, let's say if like somebody 20 years old just moved to the Bay Area and passionate about tech, but trying to understand how to get like to this point of like bright future, and their end goal is to be like successful founder, but they trying to navigate like triangle of education, corporate world, and being founder, just sitting with Claude, getting, like Claude maximum subscription and coding, building. What would be your advice?
It's a good question. My immediate reaction is education is a little overvalued. Like, I like folks like Andrew.
And you're from Stanford.
I am from Stanford. Stanford was a path for me to get to the US because I worked in finance and I wasn't a software engineer, so getting a job in the US wasn't as easy. And so, of course, I learned a lot, don't get me wrong, but these days, I don't know if any education actually brings as much value as it used to, right? Because you can learn anything with ChatGPT or Gemini or OpenClaw. Information is so democratized these days.
Yep.
Knowledge is very democratized. Of course, having some network is helpful, but like, I wouldn't say that investors necessarily cared or paid attention to my degrees. In fact, sometimes
do you feel
it's
that
even
Stanford helped you to get to Google, or no, really?
yes and no. I was going through the MBA recruiting, and so from that standpoint, yes, they recruited me because I was doing an MBA, but there were like lots of other business schools and there were lots of other Googlers who came from not from Stanford. So maybe there is a slight edge, slight preference to, I don't know, Stanford or Harvard, but it doesn't necessarily move the needle as much as people think.
But at the same time, I assume if you're gonna compare like amount of time and money you need to invest to like move the middle like so much, it's not always the best trade-off, if I get right.
Well, so depending on, like, a 20-year-old wouldn't go to business school most likely because the average
good
age is
point.
like more like 26, 27-ish. There are some folks who come to right after the undergrad, but you can get masters, and I think like Stanford and Berkeley, MIT, like other schools, they're still prestigious. And if you have a choice between going to big tech to get a good, well-paid job versus doing masters, I would go to big tech. If you get to YC versus getting a master's, I would go to YC. If your choice is between bootstrapping yet another, thin wrapper on top of ChatGPT versus doing a decent master's at a decent school, I'll think about it, but probably I'll go to a decent school if you are accepted, because it's not that easy to actually get to a decent school. And you will probably learn quite a bit. You might end up with a bit of debt, but most likely you will forget about this debt in a couple of years. You'll pay it off one way or the other. So that's my kind of mental model. I would definitely prioritize your entrepreneurial ideas as long as they really have substance, and you as a founder, you're always a little bit delusional, right? But like, you kind of need to create this plan, like, okay, how can you make your project successful? If you don't feel like you have enough understanding or enough ecosystem around you to be successful, then going to a corporate world makes sense. However, corporate world is changing, and it's probably harder these days to get a job as a 20-year-old, to get like a software engineering job or product management job, because the workforce has evolved quite a bit.
And I guess talking about the main point of the video today, Happyverse AI, for people who, let's say, outside of tech, can you, like in very simple words, describe why did you start the company, what are you building, and why you're different?
Sounds great. So we're building digital humans. Imagine like the world where you can scale yourself 10x, 100x, 1000x as a founder, as a media person, as pretty much any blue or white collar professional. You can have your own digital representation, digital twin in the virtual world, and your digital twin can do sales for you, can educate your customers about your products or services, can recruit talent. You can outsource or delegate more and more functions to your digital twin. So that's what we are building at Happyverse. We call our digital twins AI Confidants, and Confidant is a combination of an avatar and agent. So the avatar is basically your likeness, your voice, and agent is like brain, knowledge base, different agentic capabilities. The idea has evolved quite a bit since where we started. We started with a more narrow use case of life coaching. We wanted to build avatars for coaching so that anyone could have created their own personalized coach. However, once we started building the platform, we realized that we shouldn't necessarily narrow ourselves down just to coaching, because some people do not believe in the value of coaching at all, but they believe in the value of scaling yourself and like using AI to help you sell or to help you educate yourself. Like we were talking about education, so some people are using them for tutoring purposes. Yeah, and we've created over 2,000 avatars. We had more than 10,000 conversations across 100 countries so far. So we went global from day one, essentially. We decided not to limit ourselves to just one particular market. Yes, of course, the US is the most important market for us, but we have customers like in Africa, in Latin America, even in Australia. So it's great that these days you can go viral, go global pretty fast.
Was like any regions that's kind of surprised you with how popular you got there when you like never expected it?
Yeah, I think Africa surprisingly like wasn't on my bucket list, or I love Africa. I've been there a couple of times.
Wow.
But yeah, we became quite popular in countries like Nigeria, South Africa, yeah, we had some amazing avatars created by users and customers in those countries.
And I think you've mentioned that when it comes to startup, you like more than 1 year already.
Yep.
When it comes to you like being out there. Let's say if right now with all the knowledge, experience, you would travel back in time like this year, what things do differently?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think as any founder, I probably made quite a lot of, not probably, definitely made quite a lot of mistakes, and there were quite a lot of learnings. And sometimes when something seems very, very obvious, it turns out to be the wrong decision, and sometimes it's the other way around. But I would say that probably I would have hired less, and I would have focused on building a very, very lean team. However,
how big was your team, and what do you think would be ideal size?
Yeah, I had 5 co-founders initially, and at the maximum, at the peak, I had about like 12 full-time employees, and also like around like 3 or 4 part-time. So we were trying to build a very complicated product where we have like 3 layers: video, voice, LLM layer, and then like all sorts of orchestrations around it. It felt to me that we needed more people, and I thought that if you give all these latest and greatest tools like Claude Code or Codex, you can build more. Like if you think about OpenAI and Anthropic, they have an enormous army of people right now. I think it's like over 3,000 at OpenAI, probably over 1,000 at Anthropic. And even though they're telling you that, or telling the world that they believe in this one-man unicorn thing, they themselves have lots of folks. But of course they're like in a different league. You shouldn't compare yourselves to those guys, right? Like as a early stage founder, you really need to be lean. We have one of our angel investors, Henry Shi. He created this lean startup dashboard leaderboard, and he popularized this concept of a one-man unicorn. To me, it felt very lonely to even think about building a company just on my own, because you want to share ideas, you want to have some camaraderie, right? Like people need people. But people don't need too many people, and so like this one pizza rule, like famously popularized by Jeff Bezos, I think it kind of makes sense. If you cannot feed your team with one pizza or two pizzas, maybe you should reconsider how you're approaching recruiting.
But at the same time, when it comes to the advice that you mentioned, I think it's like really depends on the particular case of the company. Because let's say when it comes to a lot of people, like bootstrapping, it's like one thing. If I get right, when it comes to you, you're like backed by capital from day one. So if I got you, you're like in position when obviously we cannot compare it like to, OpenAI and companies like this. But at the same time, even when it comes to what we see like in the Bay Area, you're like a bit ahead of many founders who are like starting their companies.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, right? Like you look at the world, there's so many founders, so many startups.
Yeah.
There's always going to be somebody ahead of you, somebody behind you, somebody at the
And
same
people looking at you
level.
and thinking that the grass is greener on the other side.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, I think like we started incorporated the company in February last year. In April, we closed our pre-seed. We raised a couple of $1 million from Village Global, Jeff Dean, and some other angels. And yeah, I thought that since we raised money, we got this right and privilege to like invest capital, we should deploy it, because there are quite a lot of founders that I know that are preserving their cash as much as possible and not even investing anything. Like there are examples of companies like raising and not investing any single dollar from the round that they raised. Like they're like, using money from previous rounds. And then what's the point of raising then, right? Like, having this kind of war chest or something. To me, I think you should spend this capital, but you should be very strategic and very smart about who you hire, why you hire them. There is this concept of vibe hiring, which now is another mistake of mine, or something that I want to caution founders. Like you really need to write down your job specs, job description. Sometimes you meet people and you think like, oh, these are wonderful people. I want to have them on my team. I'll figure out what role I'll give them. More often than not, that's a mistake. So you kind of need to hire people for specific things that are top of mind for you or that are the most critical for your business.
That's like an interesting point. If I got right, before like startup, you already had experience in angel investing. And, even like after all of this, hearing your standpoint about, middle ground between spending capital and kind of saving it, it's super interesting.
Yeah. As an angel investor, I mostly invested in companies that, were quite risky in a way. And I understood that this angel game, early stage investing game, is not about being extremely financial disciplined, having like cash flow, EBITDA projections, etc., and like making sure your margin is like within some ballpark. Like no one does this in early stage investing, right? Like you kind of need to find your product market fit. You need to spend wisely, but like not to the level of like rigorous financial model where you track like every week like how you're doing. That's more like later stage, like private equity kind of investments. So yeah, in terms of my angel investing, the most successful company turned out to be Bitcoin mining farm. Probably the second most successful and still work in progress. It's a company called Alma, and they're doing AI for legal immigration. So if anyone needs like O1 visa or EB1 green card or H1B package, etc., you can go to tryalma.com and try Alma. It's an amazing product started by an amazing founder, Aizada. She used to be a lawyer, and she decided to use AI for this interesting domain.
And when it comes to world of startups, founders, do you feel that there are like any advices out there which is like which are super popular, but actually they like more harmful, but they like actually more harmful than good?
One thing that comes to my mind is sometimes some investors and mentors were telling me that I shouldn't hire head of sales or like salesperson until I sell enough myself as a founder. The other idea, and there's debate about it, right? But the other idea is that you should hire a talented salesperson almost from day one, so that they go and they try to sell your, bicycle, like this famous concept, like you're building a car, but initially
Yeah.
you need to build a scooter, then bike, then bicycle, and etc., etc., until you get to the car. So now I feel like I heard the first group a bit more, and I delayed hiring a dedicated salesperson until very recently. And I think that was a mistake, and that's the wrong advice that I feel like now, actually building the product is easier than ever, but
Yep.
selling is not, because there's so many things in sales that you need to do right. You still need to have relationships, especially if you're selling to enterprise. If you're selling to consumers, you need to find creative marketing angle, and you need probably like a dedicated marketing person. I think Claude Code can do marketing for you, but I really have not seen like really good stories of Claude Code selling successfully. You still need a human in the loop who understands what are the trends, who has some taste, some style, etc. So yeah, I think that's one advice that I didn't really appreciate as much.
And you being in the Bay Area for a long time, both like in the corporate world and as a founder, did you feel that city in some way like different for you, depending on what side of things are you?
Yeah, I think so when I was in the corporate world at Google, I moved from Bay Area to San Francisco, and I had some spare time to really enjoy the city. And then when I initially became a founder, for the first few months, I was just sitting in my small office, which is around the corner here on the Montgomery Street. It was like a tiny little office with no windows, and I
How
was
many
just
square
working
feet?
and working. It's like, I don't know, like 10. We barely were able to fit in 3 tables.
Wow.
Yeah, for 3 people, and that's it. And I was just sitting there. I was ordering food from DoorDash, and I didn't even see the light
So it was
most
like
of the day.
grind mode,
Exactly,
founders mode.
exactly, founders mode. Now, like looking back, should I have approached it differently? Maybe I should have spent a bit more time talking to customers, going outside of my little bubble. But at the same time, though, you need to have these periods of grind where you just go all in and you just like build the product foundations before you go and talk to others. And like bridging the gap with the previous question. If you have head of sales, they do not need to sit in your tiny little office. Usually it's like engineers and like CEO or product who are supposed to be there all the time. Head of sales should go and talk to customers.
I feel when it comes to the whole grind mode, because in my life I try to work like a very different way. It's like the best when you spend some hours and doing like very focused, like deep work. But when it comes to some time when you feel that you're like not productive anymore, you spend it like on physical activity, such as like gym, cardio, just to have like more energy, next day to be like in better mental state, socializing like with the right people. I feel that you can spend like quality time outside of just building to make like building time more quality time.
100%. And it's so hard to come up with the perfect formula. Like,
Yeah.
at what point you should go and, let's say, go to the gym or go and walk around. Like, you kind of need to listen to your body, but sometimes your body is lying to you, and maybe you can actually spend a bit more time working, or maybe you just don't really have any signals, and then it's too late and you're like completely burned out. So it's not easy, and I think AI is getting better and better, like with things like ordering, right? Like, or smartwatch, like
Yep.
it gives you those little signals like, oh, you're too stressed or you haven't moved as much. I haven't found a perfect formula yet for me. I think it's kind of evolving, but yeah, for everyone it's like kind of personal and individual.
I'd say when it comes to two of my favorite things, basically doing sports and meditation. You've shared with me that
Meditation
you're
is
doing like
extremely
both of it, and
important.
I think meditation is like quite a game changer.
100%. I highly recommend a device called Muse. So you can put it on your head. It's like a headband, and it tracks your brain waves, and it shows you the quality of your meditation. And also, you put your headphones and you listen to the music, and if you meditate well, if you calm your mind, you hear birds chirping. And if you don't, birds are not chirping. And so that was such a game changer for me. I couldn't really force myself to meditate before I discovered this Muse thing. I really, really like it. It's one of my favorite like hardware tech products.
I know when it comes to some founders, they have like this belief in their head, for example, hey, when I'll get like to some particular milestone of my startup, I will allow myself to do like the thing I've been like delaying, I've been postponing for such a long time. For example, I'll go through like some particular TV episodes, or for example, I'll go to some trip. When it comes to you, do you have like any things that you have to delay because of startup, but you know that when you'll get to some particular threshold, milestone, you will allow yourself to do it?
Yeah, great question. So two answers. Like one is financially, of course, you want to be successful and you want to afford maybe some cool things like, I don't know, flying a private jet. You don't have to have your own, but like just having those experiences, like why not? I think it's nice. And you know, before you get to that level of like IPO, whatever, probably you could not afford those things.
Oh, so for you, it's like more about financial investment
More
than
about
time
experiences
time
that
investment.
I just understand I cannot afford. But in terms of time investment,
Yep.
I have a very contrarian view. I know some founders in the Bay Area are popularizing this concept of like no dating until Series B or no XYZ until XYZ. I think the life is too short and you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. If you just go all in on work and you sacrifice other important areas of your life just will not be as happy as it could be. In fact, at Happyverse, we've been thinking about happiness a lot. Actually, our mission is to increase happiness and well-being for millions of people around the world with safe and useful AI. And so we came up with this happiness formula, which consists of 4 categories: love, health, work, and wealth. And as a founder, you think a lot about work.
Yeah.
You may not think about wealth as much because you just realize that, okay, if you do your work well, wealth will come. But if you sacrifice health, that's a really bad idea. If you sacrifice love, well, some people are okay being single and, you know, not having romantic love.
I'd say it's like a bit of difference between sacrificing love when you have like, let's say, your loved one family and you basically not spending time with them because of working, or for example, when you're kind of postponing finding the partner because of work. I think the first one is a bit worse for me.
Well, both things are, I don't know, my personal take as somebody who was in a family, got divorced, and I think not spending quality time with your family is a bad idea. Not spending time trying to find your soulmate is a bad idea. But that's me. That's how I think about the world. I think humans need humans, and I think we have this problem in the world, especially in developed world, in countries like United States, that first of all, there are not enough strong power couples and the divorce rate is way too high, and second, there are not enough babies. Like the fertility or, you know, the number of babies in the country is not growing, and that creates all sorts of challenges. Like humans might get extinct if we wouldn't solve that problem. So we need more kids.
And just so people who are going to be watching the video will understand your point of view better, how old are you right now?
36.
Because I would say, you know, hearing the same advice point of view from persons like 18 years old, like 25 and 36, I would accept it like more from you as like person with some life experience, going like, you know, through different life stations. So thank you for sharing this. And since you've mentioned like work life, personal life, recently on your Instagram, I saw like some announcement from you and your friend about dating club in San Francisco, or like power couple club. It was quite interesting, but I didn't quite get it. Can you get a bit more in details about this one?
Absolutely. So a couple of months ago, I got a call from my friend who told me, Max, why don't you start your venture capital firm? Because you have experience in investing, you've been an angel investor, you now have been a founder, and you know a thing or two about investing. And I thought, maybe she's right, but I don't have a strong thesis. Like, what do I invest in? Like, do I invest in, I don't know, ML infrastructure or some application layer, etc.? But then one thought came to my mind that I would absolutely invest in people, especially in people who have power couples. And the way I define power couple is when you have a man and a woman, or it could be two men, two women, doesn't matter, who accelerate and elevate each other, empower each other, and it's like 1 + 1 = 5. And you give some capital to this power couple, and they figure out what to do with this capital, and they can work on a project where they're both founders of the same company, or they can create two separate companies. And I have some examples of amazing people. Like I mentioned, Alma, Aizada, and her husband, Chingiz. They've been running two startups for a while. Both startups are successful, and they have a kid, and they have a beautiful family. And this is an example of a power couple. In fact, I invested in both of their startups.
Wow.
and so I decided to vibe code a website. It's called Power Couple Club. In fact, we're debating what should be the name of this project. Right now, we're leaning towards amoraclub.org, but we have the voting on our website, so please help us choose the right name. And the idea is that we'll have two levels. So level 2 is going to be for power couples that have already been created and that want to join this club so that they can get access to investments, access to network of advisors and mentors, or those power couples that are already ahead in terms of their like families and kids and whatnot, and they can give back. They can give some advice, right, to younger power couples that are just forming and figuring things out. That's level 2. Level 1 is for singles who haven't been as lucky yet to find their soulmate. And so there's so many single men, single women, even in San Francisco, even though some people joke that there are no women at all and there are only single men, right? I don't think that's necessarily true. To a certain degree it is, but there's still some single women as well. And so if we can find a way to connect them, you don't necessarily need AI for that, by the way. You can just organize some safe environment, some cool offline, in-person events, and then people mingle, and then good things happen. So that's the idea. Our first event is going to be in a couple of weeks, and so you can check our website, amoraclub.org or powercoupleclub.com, and sign up.
I guess when it comes to all founders starting their projects, they have a lot of faith in it. They want to go to bright, amazing future. But I assume that when it comes to a lot of people, if they could predict future, they would have like some particular threshold. Let's say if their startup will grow beyond like some particular point in 5 years, and they know it for sure, they will go in. But if they know that no matter what amount of effort they will invest in it, it's not gonna cross some particular threshold, maybe they would just decide to give up before this. When it comes to you, do you have like any particular benchmark, milestone, that if you know for sure that Happyverse will not cross it, you would stop the project right now?
Yeah, good question. As someone who worked in finance before and worked on some IPO deals as an investment banker or private equity investor, I always wanted Happyverse to go public. And if at some point I would feel like we're not on the track to get to a scale where we can be a public company, I think that's a reason for me to stop doing this. But for everyone, of course, it's different. No one has a crystal ball, and it's never easy to predict what's going to happen even like tomorrow, not to say in like 5 years, right? But also there's this famous phrase, like it's all about journey, not about destination, which I tend to agree. As long as you enjoy your journey, you should keep doing it.
I know some founders that would keep developing their thing, even if like in 5 years, everything will go just to zero. For them, it's like really only about the journey, not about the outcome. I would say I'm kind of like in the middle, and seem that you're like on the same page.
Yeah. I mean, like you need to think about finance and wealth, especially if you have family or even if you're single, right? Like if you keep grinding, bootstrapping something and you don't have any revenue or any investments, why, right? Like you will grind yourself into misery. So I would advise against that. I know some friends who are in that kind of situation, and I would advise them to go and find another job instead of grinding and hustling and getting yourself burned out completely. That's not healthy.
Okay, let's close the whole interview podcast with a few Blitz questions.
Fantastic. Let's go.
Chipotle or Panda Express?
Chipotle.
Palo Alto or Soma?
Soma.
Vacation in Bali or Italy?
I've never been to Italy, so I would choose Bali. But actually, I want to go to Italy, so it's a hard one. Yeah, I think because I haven't been to Italy, I would say Italy.
How many co-founders are ideal?
Oh man, it's a tough one. I had 5. That's probably a little too many.
You had or you have?
I had. I'm the only founder left right now in my startup, so things happen. But just trust your instincts. Like Anthropic has 7, right? And some companies have just 1. I feel like between 1 and 7, you can be in that spectrum. But yeah, just think about what gives you confidence that this is the successful setup, and go for it. That's my advice.
And final thing, for anybody watching this video, what would be your message to them?
Guys, there are 4 things that are important in life: love, health, work, wealth. Really do not forget about one or the other. Sometimes you need to go all in on work, but think about your relationships with your family, with your romantic partner. Think about your health. That's absolutely critical. And when it comes to wealth, it's not just about money. It's also about legacy, what you leave behind, right? Like, we'll all die at some point. Well, maybe we will not if like AI advances medicine and somehow we get some pill for like eternity. But at some point we'll die, and you want to look back at your life and you want to be proud of what you've built, what you've achieved, but also you want to be surrounded by people who would come to you before you die, or who would come to your funeral and they would say, oh, Francisco was a great person, great human being. So think about that. I think that's a helpful exercise.
Thanks so much.
Awesome.
Bye, guys.